Considering I've been a stupid ass dork for the majority of my life, I'm no stranger to seeing franchises I love and adore being beaten to death only to have their bloody corpses paraded around in the most dogshit adaptations known to man. Percy Jackson introduced me to both crippling depression and a crippling attraction to Alexandra Daddario. Death Note was turned into whatever the fuck this is, and The Last Airbender is the only movie that actively makes me want to fall asleep while I'm talking about it. But the first real gut punch I experienced, the first time a bad adaptation sent me over the edge with immeasurable levels of rage and disappointment, struck in mid-2019 with the final season of Game of Thrones.
While Danny kind of forgot about the Iron Fleet.
Yeah. She didn't say yes. Best season ever!
Watching one of my favorite series of all time fall from grace due to shitty writing, poor planning, and a rush ending, that stung a lot harder than the others. But unfortunately for me, it wouldn't be the last time that a horrible adaptation struck me in this way, and so deeply, considering it was only the following year that our Japanese brethren released the affront to humanity known as the Promised Neverland Season 2. A season of anime so bad, it probably should have got them nuked again. And now, as an anime fan, we are no stranger to bad adaptations. Considering how much of anime is based off manga, we probably see bad adaptations more than anyone else, and it can be so painful. We all have an anime or two we wish got the adaptation it deserved. We all have that manga that's forever had its name tarnished by a shitty anime. We're all huffing a bit of that copium. The fall of Game of Thrones and The Promised Neverland has done irreversible damage to my psyche, and what's so curious about that is that they ended up failing for a lot of the same reasons. A few curious similarities that had me thinking, what makes a bad adaptation? Especially in a medium as reliant on adaptation as anime. Where is the line drawn between something that does justice to the source material and something that fails on every front? How did we end up with stuff like Tokyo Ghoul, FMA 2003, Seven Deadly Sins, and so many others? Is it possible for us to avoid this pain going into the future? Or are anime fans forever doomed to suffer this cycle of seeing their favorite series reduced to mid? My name is Ibby792, and today I humbly ask you to join me in lamenting the tragedy of a bad adaptation. Alright, so before we can understand what makes an adaptation bad, I think we should take a look at what makes one good in the first place. I'm sure you guys all have your own answer for this. Maybe it's good animation, maybe it's being one-to-one accurate, or maybe it's making meaningful changes that elevate the original. But in my opinion, the key to having a great adaptation is a balanced amount of all of this. I think my favorite example can be seen in the homoerotic glory of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which for my money is one of the only anime I can say is hands down an improvement and superior experience to the manga. And this is for multiple reasons. For one, it is completely faithful to Araki's original story. All the important plot beats and events happen in both. Secondly, it has a high bar of quality, David Productions providing stellar animation, pacing, music, voice acting, and sound effects across the board. And lastly, the JoJo's anime seeks to enhance the original manga where it can, mostly through directorial choices such as shuffling events to make more sense, or adapting the iconic color swaps and poses, or even the stellar special OPs, where lesser studios may have taken a more boring, standard approach. See, what JoJo's gets right is knowing when to be faithful and when to change things. All of those decisions moving towards the singular goal of successfully transferring the soul of the series into a new medium. It's a difficult thing to do. If something is too faithful, it may run the risk of feeling unnecessary, but being unfaithful is usually even worse. If the quality is too low, it may just look like shit, and if it doesn't change enough or has too many changes, it can also be a failure. What I'm trying to say is that a good adaptation knows how to keep the balance between all these aspects, never having too much or too little of something. It's a fine line to walk, and one that many anime have failed at spectacularly. And if we were going to take a look at any individual aspect, I think the easiest place to begin would be with quality. Now, obviously quality is a subjective thing. Maybe this animation hits my eye, but doesn't hit yours. Maybe the music is fitting for me, but obnoxious for you. And maybe voice acting you find endearing makes me want to use a shotgun as a Q-tip. But the point is that while things are subjective, Having a production that many people consider to be low quality can be the fastest way to tank an adaptation. And anime is no stranger to shitty quality. Seven Deadly Sins started as a decent looking production, but as time has gone on, it's lost as many fans as it's lost frames. The same goes for Berserk 2016, which somehow looks worse than a PS3 copy of Ultimate Ninja Storm 1. Like, it doesn't matter how beloved the source material is. If it looks like donkey nuts, no one is gonna want to watch it. But that being said, quality isn't everything. Despite how much people bitch and moan about Sakuga and animation carrying, if I'm being honest, is probably the least important part of making a decent adaptation. And something can successfully adapt without having the animators spend 6 months breaking their backs on each individual frame. Look at stuff like the One Piece anime or One Punch Man Season 2. These are two anime that are largely considered to be worse than their manga counterparts, partly for quality or pacing related reasons. But that being said, neither of these are what I would call a bad adaptation, because while they may on occasion look like Flipnote studio projects, they overall faithfully convey the author's original intent and thus succeed as adaptations. And that should be the goal at the end of the day. I mean, come on, for most anime, they just gotta follow what the author already put down and drew for them on paper. I'm not saying it's as simple as copy and pasting, it's obviously not. Plenty of work goes into transferring panels to the screen, but I think it's reasonable to say that most of the process comes from animating rather than writing, which is why it's so baffling when an anime decides to throw the entire fucking script out the window and make shit up. I'm serious, the number one most common reason I found for fumbled adaptations is because they turn into a bizarre alternate universe fanfic. Full Metal Alchemist 2003, they made shit up. Tokyo Ghoul, they made shit up. Promised Neverland, well actually they skipped 100 chapters, speedran the climax, and then turned the final moments into a slideshow. But in between that, they made shit up. I can't believe this has to be said, but if people like your source material, stick to your fucking source material. There is no good reason to just take creative control, bro. You're not him. You're really not. You're not lore accurate. I think the most frustrating part about these types of changes to me is how avoidable they are. Sometimes it's just a terrible production decision by a director, writer, or mangaka, and in other cases are a product of the archaic ways anime used to be made. See, back in the day, animators would start catching up to the manga, and instead of waiting for more to release or splitting seasons to hold off, they just opted for anime original endings, a term that I'm sure puts PTSD in many people's hearts. These aren't as popular anymore, and thank God they aren't. They have pretty much never produced good results. They almost always feel rushed or out of character, and as a result leave many unsatisfied. There's a reason a lot of fans beg for these to get the so-called Brotherhood treatment. The original Fullmetal Alchemist anime ended with Ed and Al going to Nazi Germany or some shit, and it wasn't until Bones reanimated it that we got the true vision, and now it sits as one of the highest reviewed anime of all time. They look at what Brotherhood did for FMA, how it rectified the unfaithful adaptation of 2003 and made Full Metal something so much more beloved, and they want that for their community. It's a hefty dose of hopium that keeps many fan bases afloat. If it wasn't for Brotherhood, I doubt the franchise would be held in nearly the same regard. Shit, I'm sure there are many of you watching this right now who never would have experienced the series if its only legacy was this isekai to another world and now I happen to hate the Juve's ass ending. And maybe that's the real tragic thing about a bad adaptation. It's not that the already existing fans are disappointed, it's that the thought of the series is soured in the public's mind forever, cutting off a potentially beloved experience for so many people. I don't care that I didn't get to see a good version of whatever series. It would have made me happy, however, I'll always have the source material. But the thought that so many people have lost the desire to ever engage with some of my favorite pieces of media, will never care about stories I cherish, all cause some dickheads didn't understand how to properly translate its appeal, that genuinely breaks my heart. Despite how sad that is though, I think hope still exists for a lot of these franchises. Percy Jackson is getting a Disney Plus series, both Death Note and Avatar are being revisited by Netflix. Even Game of Thrones has had new life breathed into it. Who's to say Soul Eater won't make a comeback? Who's to say Tokyo Ghoul won't be revived? Who's to say Promised Neverland won't get its Brotherhood? I mean shit man, it happened to Fruits Basket. Is that wishful thinking? Most definitely. But it's the only comfort I have. As long as bad adaptations exist, I'll have to choose to huff that hopium. Good morrow, everyone. It's currently around Thanksgiving time, a little bit after, and I gotta say, I'm thankful for you for watching this video. And if you happen to be thankful for said video, a like, a comment, a sub, those all go a long way in making me feel that. I know I've just scratched the surface of how many terrible anime adaptations there are, so talk about some of your most traumatizing examples down below. I'd love to see it, and the engagement would help. I love doing these non-specific topic videos. They let me talk about a lot of anime in broad strokes without having to adhere to one source or style. And I can work in completely unrelated things, like Game of Thrones, while still having a cool discussion, and I like doing that. I hope y'all had a good Thanksgiving. Mine was pretty decent. I finished God of War 2018 and Ragnarok back to back, and they were both pretty great. I'm also playing Pokemon Violet, which is such a terribly made game, but I'm not gonna lie, it's been a blast to play. Me and the boys really been grinding that one out. If you like fantasy novels, I recently finished The Lies of Locke Lamora, and it's a fantastic read. Please check it out if you have any interest in clever rogue thieving capers with mystery. Also, this means it's the end of No Nut November. How you boys holding up? Did you make it through? I didn't. I got 20 days in before I folded, but that's a new record, so I'm happy with that. Salute to anyone who did make it all the way through. Bleach just dropped 2 of the best anime episodes I've ever seen in my life, and I'm so happy to see it thrive. I'm so indebted to that franchise. Yeah, it's been a long month. I have finals next week, which is scary, but I have a full month off after, so maybe I'll get time to really grind out some videos. I'm thinking of going for another shonen nostalgia trip in the style of Yeah, Bleach slaps for my next one, so who fucking knows. But whenever y'all hear from me next, I hope you'll tune in, and take care of yourself in the meantime. Yeah, have yourself a damn good one.